NSX Press, 1992, January, Volume 6. Suisse, the capital of sports cars. Samuel Heuer. When he was young, he was a racing driver. Now he is the owner of a good company and a local notable. Heuer is friendly, talkative, and laughs a lot, but the sports car discussion is really hardcore. He was born in a clapboard house on the outskirts of Bière, where his father ran a repair shop. At the age of 17, he had the experience of collecting broken cars and tailoring them into what he liked. Then he was active as a full-scale racing driver in the 1960s. Currently, he is busy daily as the owner of a cement company. His sports cars include the NSX, a Porsche 911 Turbo, and a restored MGTC. In addition, his home boasts a collection of military vehicles, jet fighters, and even cannons. His eldest son is a lawyer in New York, his eldest daughter is a horseback riding champion, and his second daughter is studying languages at a university in Geneva. He is a versatile person who also plays the small accordion and horn, the folk instruments of the Alps. Switzerland has banned motorsports since the nightmare of the 1955 Le Mans 24-hour race. Therefore, F1 Grand Prix, WRC, and touring car racing have nothing to do with the country. But that doesn't mean that everyone is indifferent to motorsports. Samuel Heuer, who appears here, is a perfect example. About 30 kilometers northwest of the capital of Bern is the small city Bière. Heuer's home is in the suburbs. There is a Daimler Sovereign in the garden, and the Range Rover is casually parked. But when you enter the house, you'll find race-related cups, trophies, badges, and black and white photographs of yesteryear. Do Swiss people hate racing? It's not like that, Heuer says in his loud baritone voice. Of course, we don't race in our country, but we go to other countries. In the early 1960s, Heuer participated in numerous touring car races and rallies as a driver. In particular, at the European Touring Car Championship in Monza in 1963, he drove a Jaguar and recorded the fastest lap. Before and after that, he was an active MG test driver. He has a close relationship with top-notch racers such as Hans Harman, Fangio, Joe Schiffert, and Clay Regazzoni, and there are countless souvenirs and nostalgic photographs related to them. After retiring from racing, he still hasn't washed his hands of being a volunteer. Heuer holds a certified racing driver license, International A grade, and is a commentator on F1 broadcasts. From the ground up, he is a motor sportsman. Therefore, when it comes to the topic of sports cars, the 61-year-old's baritone, lilting German, and hand gestures are powerful and dynamic. His wife, who smiles by his side, puts an exquisite touch on the story of the former racer, so it is a lively and energetic group of people. The NSX? It's interesting to think about how I got this. I got it by chance because of my nephew. The kid was working for a Honda dealer at the time, and he kept telling me about the NSX. Then I received a letter from Honda saying, "Thank you very much for applying for the NSX sports car." Until then, I really didn't know about the NSX or had even seen one before. Of course, it was in automobile magazines, but I was still surprised. At that time, Honda Switzerland asked the person who applied for the car to pay a deposit of CHF 20,000. The idea was to prevent this car from being speculative. It was a wonderful thing when I think about it now. Such cars, which are difficult to obtain due to the limited production numbers, have always been used to make money. It's a real problem. When I bought the NSX, everyone said, "Why an NSX instead of an F40?" I said, "It's like buying to sell with the F40. I bought the NSX to drive." Thus, in April 1991, his NSX was delivered, and he drove about 4,000 kilometers in 5 months. Heuer says he does not use the NSX for business at all, but purely a way of driving that is devoted to the joy of driving. The NSX has a different character than other sports cars, doesn't it? He says as he shares his impression of the car. Among the Swiss NSX owners we interviewed for this issue, he was the only pro driver, so I really looked forward to what he had to say. The NSX is a rare sports car with two faces. One of them is very comfortable and quiet, so to speak, in the grand touring aspect. My wife always praises that point. His wife leans forward and speaks in a beautiful French soprano. That's right. Even though it's such a sporty car, it's impressive that it's very quiet when you drive it. It's comfortable to ride in and the seats are very comfortable. My husband drives a lot of sports cars, and I've been riding with him for a long time. The NSX feels good. The master takes over. Needless to say, it's an exciting aspect of a full-fledged sports car. I especially love to drive on the mountain roads with the NSX. I always think it's perfect. The power of the engine, the handling, brakes, suspension. I don't have any complaints at all. There are quite a few mountain roads in this area that are good for driving. It feels great in the early morning and, above all, it's nice that there are no police. In fact, for the photo shoot, Heuer took the photographer and me to the recommended scenic roads, but his driving was different from ordinary drivers. If it starts to rain suddenly, I will not leave but will run through the corners as many times as I want. It seemed like he was having fun turning the TCS on and off, all while keeping the NSX perfectly under his control. Many drivers said that the NSX's first gear was a bit too low. There were also many people who said that the second gear and above had good connections, and that it was a pity that the gear ratio was inappropriate. What did Heuer have to say? I understand that many people say that. In fact, Mercedes and others only import after changing the AT gear ratio to the Swiss specifications. But I don't agree at all. Rather, it's more fun because you can swing around more aggressively in tight corners. It's good. I think people who say that kind of thing only run straight lines. It's no problem for me as it is. I also love the body design of the NSX because it's rounded and feminine. Look at Ferrari. Isn't it sharp and cut off? The NSX is a lot sexier than that. Especially around the rear fender, isn't it just the curvaceous beauty of a beautiful woman? You want to care for it gently. At this, Mrs. Shishimo had a slightly embarrassed face, but we interviewers laughed and laughed. It's a different viewpoint from that of the Japanese that praises the NSX in such a crazy way. When we recovered, I asked if he had any dissatisfaction with the NSX. Well, I'm not dissatisfied with the actual hardware itself, but in Europe, sports cars always exceed 300 horsepower. The NSX is powerful because it's light, and the 274 horsepower isn't unsatisfactory, but it seems to make everyone feel underpowered. I think it would have been better to make the tires wider and lower the vehicle in height a little, so that there would be no gap in the wheel arches. Of course, that tire size is the best in terms of performance, I know, but looks are very important for sports cars. Whether it's Porsche, Ferrari, or Renault Alpine, all the cars in that category in Europe really care about what they look like, too. If you look good, even if you have a slightly better balance, you don't care. Heuer, who loves talking and is a great host, continues to visit with us. For us, it is a fresh perspective. It's sad to run out of space here, but it's true that there are people in Switzerland who have such a bold sports car philosophy.